I want to talk about human caring and how it sits in the heart of our humanity, runs deep in the human story and goes way back into our DNA. And I want to talk about how social policy makers create social programs trying to address social issues, and these programs need human caring to work, but the sheer weight of those programs threaten to suffocate the human caring they're based on. And I should know because, ironically, I run a social program, Big Buddy. We look after fatherless boys. Basically, we get well-screened male mentors and match them up with fatherless boys in what we envision be lifelong relationships. Actually, it's not, we call it mentoring. It's not mentoring, it's fathering, really. We work in the field of fathering. I realised that once, years ago, I was running a training program for some new mentors, and I just said, there's no manual to do this stuff. Men have been doing this, looking after the young fellas, for about 100,000 years. It's in our bones, it's in our DNA to do this stuff. You already know how to do that. I must admit, I was totally winging it at the time, but the look on recognition in those guys' faces told me I was onto a deeper vein here. And it was made even clearer to me last month. We had a little 8-year-old boy, we matched up with a mentor, and he went out for his first outing, came back to mum, and he said, I know he's not my dad, but he is a dad. So that boy's wisdom was even more to the point. So I've been doing this for about 13 years now, got alongside me a fantastic team, matched up hundreds and hundreds of fatherless boys. And in that time, I've learnt two key things. One is we're clearly right in the business of human caring. We're part of the human story and all its ragged glory and messiness and ultimate hope. And secondly, when you create a social program like ours, there's tremendous pressure from the outside to put structure and constraints on it, mainly boundaries and rules, to keep the whole thing safe and risk-free. And that alarms me. But most of all, what I've learnt is what I've got is a huge respect for human caring and how it comes out in all sorts of places, in all sorts of ways. It never ceases to amaze me when one person steps into the life of another person without judgment or expectation or even having a solution, just alongside them. And it happens every day in many ways. There. It's happening here. And I look at this process of caring, it comes out of a movement of empathy, actually. And it kind of rolls like this. You may see in another's eyes a glance of grief, loss, despair, trauma, whatever it is. And something happens here in your heart. You're propelled to connect with that person, empathy. And you connect and you find out a bit more what happened to their life. And you say the only thing humanly possible at that stage, my God, that's awful. That must hurt. No one should have to bear that alone. And sometimes it's that small act of human kindness where the other person's just had their stuff recognised and witnessed is enough. There's a release in that of being acknowledged by another human being. But maybe you take it a bit further and sit alongside that person, hear more of their story. And then you find yourself walking alongside that person, stumbling occasionally, as they find their way back home, eventually, to some form of happiness or wholeness. It's an amazing process. I like to call human caring empathy in action. And so those of us in the social space, we see this stuff happening all the time. We think, how can we take this empathy, caring, healing thing happen and make more of it happen for the world, to make the world a better place to solve social problems? So we wrap it all up and we think, in whatever area we're working with, kids or youth or families, and we wrap it up into the core of a social program. And then we think, this is a program. We better make it a program to make it reputable and get funding and all the rest of it. So we talk to outside experts, of which there are a lot. Consultants, academics, knowledgeable people. And that conversation kind of rolls like this. Okay, we've got this little caring thing. We're pretty happy with it. What do you reckon? And they think, right, okay, you'll need some policies and procedures and you'll need professional standards. Professional standards? Well, where do they come from? Oh, well, we've got health, social, education. We've got a bit of business stuff here. Yeah, you'll need them. Everybody uses the same standard. Thanks, I think. Oh, and you'll need, here's a bag of legal stuff. You'll need financial management strategies, and you'll need to plan. You'll need strategic plans, business plans, development plans, learning plans, and planning plans. Anything else? You need to report on the plans to make sure you did what you planned you were going to do. Okay, this is starting to sound insane. Anyway, and you're going to need boundaries, rules and boundaries. Why do we need the boundaries? Listen, my son, human beings are messy. You're getting them all together and caring. Who knows what could happen? They could get too involved. Love might happen. Keep it clipped and tight. Get enough human caring to deliver your outcome. It's sounding more insane. One last thing. You're going to love this. Psychometric assessments. Psychometric evaluations. You can have that for free. Thanks. So you got all this stuff, and you're building your program up and all this stuff, and you've got this structure here, and you're writing your manuals and stuff like that, and then you go and talk to the funders. And that conversation goes like this. Okay, we've got the human caring thing, we've got this, and we've got that little shiny psych thing. And they go, nice, lovely. Oh, we like the psych thing. Anything with psych is good because it sounds important. And, okay, what I need now is, what's your outcomes? Outcomes? Yeah, what are you going to do? What's going to happen in the world when you've done all this stuff? Oh, okay, happiness. There'll be an increase in human happiness. You're taking a piss. You can't measure that. That's so wide. We can't. No, I need it tighter. Okay, tighter. The boys in our program will make better informed life choices and be better informed citizens in our communities. I don't believe I said that. Better, tighter. Can't measure any of that too. Give me a bit more tighter than that. Gracious. Just stepping outside that conversation. It's getting a bit intense. Just thinking, who decides these outcomes and why? I just noticed with government social policy thinking recently is increasingly driven by economic thinking. And it kind of goes like this. When we get vulnerable people end up in the end of their lives in addiction services, social services, justice in prison, they cost us a fortune, $100,000 a year to keep someone in prison. So let's spend the money with the kids and the families and the high-risk youth. There's a certain kind of hard logic in that, but most of the programs that do that stuff are founded on human caring, which is a soft, mushy human thing that's quite ancient actually, and doesn't sit alongside this hard-edged economic thinking. And by the way, why don't those economic thinkers solve child poverty? That would be a start. Anyway, folks now, I got it. None of the kids in our program, none of the boys in our program will end up in social services, courts, or prison. Bang, you got it. You got it, buddy. I like that. You got a deal. Here's the money. Oh, by the way, you're going to have to report back to us on what you did with the money. But you know what we're going to do with the money. We just told you. Yeah, we just don't trust you. So that's kind of how it rolls. So you end up with this big structure of a social program, and you've got the standards and policies. You haven't forgotten the little caring in the bottom of it. But what can happen is this stuff squashes and squeezes the living life juice out of the caring that the whole thing was based on. That's the risk. That's the real risk. But hey, human caring, it's going to happen anyway. It's part of us. It's got to emerge. It wants to emerge. It will find a way through. Here's a true story from our case files. We had a mentor matched up with this boy for 5 years. The boy's mum was a street worker, prostitute, heavily gang connected, fairly dangerous, drugs and all the rest of it. He was allowed supervised police access to her 4 times a year. And he lived with her sister. Her sister died. So he lived with her sister's friend. She moved down. And the mentor and his wife came to us and said, what's going to happen now? There's nowhere for him to live. He'll end up in the foster system, and that would break our hearts. That would break our hearts because by now they loved him and he loved them. That's what happens. I thought, What am I going to do here? All the boundaries I'm going to cross here. Okay, we went and negotiated with the government agencies, lawyers and all the rest of it. And the end game was that couple adopted that boy, fully adopted that boy with all the approvals. And he went and moved in with them where he felt loved and safe and cared for. They were all happy. They honoured the relationship with his mum so he could go and visit his mum. They didn't want to diss her. So the end game for me was fantastic. Now, by the standards of international mentoring organisations, I should have been fired for allowing that to happen. You're fired. Literally. That's how it works in my business. But I'm bloody glad I did it. I'm really proud of it. Human caring, it's sort of like some little weed that will grow out of the cracks and all the concrete walls we put around it. It's going to happen. It's going to find some way to emerge, regardless of the program structures. And this happens in social work a lot, but it's just not reported. Social work black market. I've got a friend who's it exists. I don't have time to talk about that, but I've got a friend who's a social worker with a large caseload. She had a solo mum on her caseload with 2 kids, terrible background, lived a totally chaotic life. My friend would ring her up every morning and say, wake up, get your kids breakfast, make them some lunch, get them dressed, send them to school. That's all she did every morning. Took her about 10, 15 minutes. And she did that regularly every morning of her working week. Now, her managers and supervisors are on her case saying, you're spending too much time on this case, it's hopeless, move on to the next case. Stop wasting your time. So my friend went under the table and did it anyway. Ignored her managers, ignored them. And she did that because she knew that if she'd referred on, as they were saying, truancy officers would be involved, other social workers would be involved, the heavy boots would come in and take those kids out and move them into foster care and put mum on a parenting program. But the truth is those kids, they loved their mum and she loved them. They just wanted her to get her act together, that's all. So my friend went under the table with it, rang her up every morning, every working morning for 2 years. For 2 years, she was that faithful. That's what I call caring. Until that woman finally got her act together and finally could do it all by herself, and it was a good outcome. Now, the tragedy of that is it was a good outcome, but nobody upstairs in the policy department knew about it or could be inspired. Here's an easy way to do this. It doesn't just triple up. It's tragic. And sometimes human caring emerges and we're totally blind to it because it's not part of the silo, it's not part of our program. It'll just come up anyway. It wants to happen. And here's another true story to illustrate that. A friend of mine who was doing his PhD, his thesis on the complexities of elderly care. And by God, it's complex. Lots of different agencies and health people involved with elderly people, living alone usually, and no one talking to each other. It's chaos. He was trying to unpeel all this. And what he noticed in the data was one consistent group of older people living alone who were having really good health outcomes in that they didn't report to the doctor as often, they didn't report to the hospital, if ever. Good health outcome. So he dug a bit deeper and he found out that those people were getting a cleaner who went to their house twice a week to clean the house. He thought, wow. He dug a bit deeper. And it turns out those cleaners were sitting down next to the old people and having a chat. Hello, darling. Grandkids come last week? Oh, lovely. Just a normal human chit-chat. Human contact. Because the reason those people were reporting to the doctors and the hospital so often was just to feel the warmth of human contact. Just to feel the warmth. That's all they wanted. They just wanted to be cared about. And I bet you the managers of those cleaners, with their efficiency standards and all the rest, will be on their case saying, no, you spent too much time on that one, down to 57, they need the house cleaned. I've got another house for you today. Because for those managers, their outcomes were clean houses, not happy people. And ironically, those cleaners were the lowest paid people in the healthcare system. The lowest paid. So, my challenge to social policy makers is to honour this human caring that's an ancient part of our humanity actually, and hold it up as a kind of guiding light of social work. The reference point, the key source from what we work from. Everything else is secondary. Everything else should be secondary. And my advice to people like me who run social programs is get all your structures and stuff and stretch them out and make a great big hole in your program where human caring can flourish on its own terms. Get out of the way of human caring and get alongside it. Because human caring goes way back. It goes way back into our DNA. I think the reason we survived as a species for 100,000 years was not Darwin's survival of the fittest, the strongest, the biggest, the fastest. We survived because we joined hands. We linked arms. We cared for each other. We grieved for our dead. We held those in distress. That's how we got to where we are now. It was human caring that got us here. And in the end, that's all any of us really want, to be cared for. Not to be famous, not to be admired, not to be respected, not even to be loved. Simply to be cared for, to be held. Thank you.